realities. So what we have to do is start activating the heart chakra. We have to make sure that this heart is active. One way to kind of ignite the inner um, force is to do like vocalizations, in speaking affirmations like to the elements, to connect with the the creator, whether that's connecting with the higher father principle, the higher mother principle, um, all of the different heroes, whether Krishna, Ram, Mercury, Hermes, Osiris, Ma'at. All of these different beings are virtues and principles and soul powers, or better yet, soul allies. They're allies to the soul and should be used and activated. So we have, in this age of Aquarius, we it's been less and less where people see the universe around them as alive. Like back then, astrology wasn't simply just predicting events. It was all about the knowing the personality behind all of the planets, all of the zodiac, all of the seasons. That every season was another face of deity. Every hour of the day, in certain increments, take on a different face, a different temperament, or a different mood of the one causal force that emanates through all beings. So in the Upanishads, it says, out of the Supreme Spirit came the fire. The fire produced the air, the water, and then we go even more dense into the earth, where we are given these physical bodies which resemble the skeletal system. Now, regardless if they used to be silicone-based and more subtle in nature, they're still part of the physical realm. These bones are just evidence of Saturn's extra influence, and we have to experience what it's like to be inside of these carbon-based bodies. We've already experienced the, more translucent silicone-based bodies, but we have to be practical and work from where we're at now. So we have to start becoming more subtle in our physical bodies now. We have to start making our physical bodies transmute. And if you're already on the path of course, number one is always ethics. I call them super ethics, or esoteric ethics, which means to following the inner good within yourself, to trying to temper and tame the more animalistic nature until it slowly turns into what it's meant to be. So during that process, we have to work with this physical body, with the bones. And in order to etherealize it, we have to have the energy. The reason why I bring up the charity and the ethical nature is because, like, if God, God, is the good principle, Christ is the good principle. The good principle is what takes us out of the snares of the illusion, whether it be egotistical, narcissist, like if not many, including during this age, there's many like disorder. Right now, when I'm saying disorders of the mind, I'm saying more like aggregates that we create. There's a lot of addiction. There's a lot of self-absorption, lots of deceit, pride, a lot of these elements. But that is not a bad thing, because these elements that we have to work with are going to be the crude material that we use in creating the philosopher's stone. So that's all what has to be burned in the Aries calcination process. That burning purification process turns it into ashes. Those ashes are then extracted, the vapors or the soul essence, from the physical. We're extracting the essence from the physical material, but we're not going at it there, because Jesus says we bring heaven to earth. I'm bringing the kingdom of heaven down to earth. So we're taking, once we separate the subtle from the gross, we have to combine them. We have the fire and the wind on one side, more of the spirit, and we have water and earth on the other. Now, the recombining process, boom, the alchemical marriage takes place, and that is when the extracted spirit then begins to take effect and subtly purify the physical body. The body must become etherealized. There's some people that are like walking on air, or there's terms that we use like, he looked like he's walking on clouds, he's walking on water, he's walking on he's walking on sunshine. These things that we hear are all symbolic emblems of higher states of consciousness. You can reach a stage of life in this physical body where you're walking on sunshine. And maybe other people won't be able to see it, but your atoms or your physical body is actually becoming more etherealized and more translucent. There are beings, it's nothing to practice now, I mean, unless you dedicate your whole life to it, but there are beings that can walk through walls, teleport, and do all different types of things that they dedicated their entire life and have the correct blueprint within themselves, or lineage of knowledge to understand that it is very possible. But just as basic esotericists, um, like Isra Regardi once said, it's easier to understand how to do practical things. You're in this universe of limitation for a reason. In the higher realms, you could become unlimited. Here's a time to practice and work with the limited nature. So by working with the limited nature, we learn the knowledge of good and evil. We know the knowledge of left and right. And we know also the evil and the good in the evil. We start to learn these different processes. We begin to see pleasure more as a repulsion, and pain as more of a lesson. We begin to learn how to suffer slowly as we slowly observe ourselves developing our consciousness into its highest state of being. So this is called the purification of fire. As we go through the water baptism, we're physically incarnated into a physical body. When the sun's going down into the ocean waters, it seems to be going in and into the waters. In the ancients, they knew that this was a symbol of the soul descending from Kether to Malkuth and being dunked inside of the physical water. And that's what the mystery of the Red Sea is, because the body is 70% liquid water. That water is the Red Sea, or the water ocean that the initiate has to evaporate. In all of the ancient legends, there's always a story of the Logos or the Christic being evaporating waters, whether it be Moses transitioning through the Red Sea, Jonah coming out of the well, Jesus walking on water. We have the Captain Sinbad in the ocean conquering the waters. All of these holy evaporations, or when it says Jehovah came down and evaporated the waters from the earth, it is talking about the fiery spirit within us that must be ignited to create this holy evaporation process that feeds the translucent bodies. Once the bodies are fed and nourished, our faculties come back, plain and simple. The talents, the faculties, the inner reservoir of bliss, the self-contentment comes back. It is a simple method of cause and effect. So one way to practice to etherealize the body is, everyone has learned a lot of rhythmic breathing, basic breathing exercises. There's a lot of videos on the Academy. If you go back through the archives, there's lots of breath videos, not on my channel. I've taught a couple of them, but there's a lot of pranayama. And when you combine it with this process of imagining that the body's pores are opening up to the sizes of sponge holes, and that your pores have holes all over your body in the same way a cheese, or think of like spider webs. And this is from Western esoteric practices called pore breath, which actually goes to farther in Taoist teachings, alchemical teachings of the Taoist, where we begin to nourish our bones with pranic light energy, which slowly sublimates them if combined with conserving all of your energies in the appropriate way so that you have enough material to transmute, because it's kind of like a laboratory operation. So if you maintain focus, relaxation, eyes slightly shut. Of course, we always stare at the bridge of Brahman's cave. Dark room if you can. Set your body into a state of relaxation. And when you breathe in, pretend that you're breathing 360 degrees around you, coming in to the center of your spine. So instead of breathing in your nose and your mouth, believe that your pores are 360 degree all around your body, inhaling the air, using your spine as a central column where the inhalation is taking place. After about 10 minutes, your body is going to start feeling like it doesn't exist. The holes are going to feel like the air is actually moving into your body, into your bones, and you should feel intense tingling sensations of strange relax. This tingling sensations prana, and this is how you can begin to feed your etheric body. Now, your astral body and your mental body have to be fed differently, but they all come to the same conclusion. Those more subtle bodies are more activated through the consciousness of subtle activities. So, overcoming internal trials, overcoming internal tests that the universe puts us to purify our character. The purification of our character is what helps to activate those finer, subtle bodies, which then, once activated, be able to have more vivid experiences and more prophetic downloads when we go to sleep. Because when we're in darkness, just like the initiates, they have the blindfold. Those initiates, that blindfold represents the unable to see, unable to see in the dark. And when we close our eyes, we see darkness. When we go to sleep, we see darkness. So the ability of the alchemist is to create an illuminating effect. Our meditations become more serene and more bright. It's just that we have to take time to identify with the black orb, the black portal within ourselves that is Krishna, which is beyond space and time. And I always say that it feels like it's hovering kind of behind your back or atop your head. So it's better to practice a lot of meditations we've practiced throughout our journey. And the root chakra, the heart, the solar plexus, we should try to focus on this chakra above our head, which is going to take us to bridge our pineal gland connection to the spiritual sky so that we can have a better navigation. And the reason why this has to be going over in another time, this is all just basic knowledge, but because we're being bombarded so much by these entropic forces, we have to take like little extra measures just to make sure that we're staying connected. So, they say man without some type of spiritual connection or religion becomes slowly mentally ill over time. So the whole point is to develop a sense of devotion to the Supreme and try to find out how to merge your will in the Creator's will so that your will is purified and taken up to such a high level that the four elements can't perturb you, that you don't get drowned in the waters of emotion, that you don't become a hysterical, that you don't become a fanatic, a condemner, a judger, that you tame your earth so that you're not just a lazy bone sleeping all day. Now, if you need rest, know how to rest. When we're resting, and there's a time in the Tao Te Ching, it says there's a time for everything. There's a season for these things. There's a season for celebration, a season for work, a season for rest, a season to get angry, a season to be sad, a season to grieve. We can't fight those seasons. We're not trying to take ourselves out of them. The problem is that we become obsessive and compulsionary. Humans, we become compulsive about these things. We dawdle and dwaddle in melancholy. We get absorbed into depressions of Saturn, and then we want alcohol. We become indulged in greed and materialism of Jupiter, and then we always are thinking about what are we going to wear today? What are we going to, how can I acquire more funds? If we're becoming, and it's not bad to have these. It's just know how to switch them on and off like little switches on a switchboard. You should be able to control the Jupiter, control the Mars. If somebody doesn't have Mars, you're not going to get angry when needed. Your family's getting robbed and you do nothing about it. Your Mars is shut off. You should be angry and violent towards an attacker. Of course, to show them as much remorse as possible, but if your Mars is inactive, which is a problem with a lot of men in this day and age, is that the passive principle is overtaking too much, so their Mars is becoming infiltrated, demasculized, and women are becoming overly masculized. So men are becoming feminized and effeminate, and women are becoming masculine because of this. It has all been pre-planned. It has all been pre-planned because they already know the esoteric science of the soul, so they know how to thwarp that and to warp it into something it's not. So basically what we do is we just ignite the inner fire within, that fire impulse of the Christic force, the NIRI, which is the nature purifies by fire. That inner fire within us is the inner spiritual sun, the central sun. That sun is what transmutes all of the waters in our body. Those chemical waters, once transmuted, are then luminescently light, just like distilled water from the rain contains more spiritual properties than just mineral water. That distilled water that we get from rainwater is on a higher potent level, a more subtle level, a more etherealized. We have to etherealize our fluids. Remember the four rivers of Eden: the spit, the blood, the urine, and the well, I mean, could it be sweat, or could it be, I'd say, the sexual energy? The four rivers, the four fluids, the four seasons, all of these have to be, um, the Garden of Eden to be properly nourished again. These rivers have to be flowing. The Jordan River, which is the spinal column, has to be continually getting a prophet doused in it. Moses has to be continually put within to ride up, to become enslaved in Egypt, to overtake it, to become better. Joseph and the coat of many colors. Joseph, he was hated by his brothers. His dad, Jacob, gave him a coat of many colors. Please see my YouTube video, Joseph, the Mysteries of the Coat of Many Colors. This initiate is, of course, Joseph is the sun. The coat of many colors are the seven lights that come from the sun. That coat is what the initiate wears when he's starting to activate his internal inner rainbow, the inner rainbow of the seven lights. The seven lights, each one correlating to a gland and a body and a nervous center, all connected to the nervous system, which is the tree of knowledge. This is why the Bible is a biochemical book of anatomy. And we're learning about Joseph, the coat of many colors. His dad, of course, favors him because he is a little bit more innocent. He's a little bit more peculiar. He's a little bit more curious. His brothers don't like him too much. In fact, they try to kill him. They put him in a pit. Of course, this is the sun descending. So he's thrown in the pit. Then they decide not to kill him. They sell him as slavery to Egypt. While he's a slave there, because he's so crafty, he's the higher spiritual nature. He does math better than everyone. He's a better leader than everyone. The person that enslaves him ends up turning him to Lord of the land. He becomes Lord of the land, and then his brothers even end up coming back begging for food during a drought. And the father is, he basically tells him, hey, I'm your brother, but it's all because of God. It ended up being God in the end, that God used the brothers, the wicked brothers at the end, to elevate Joseph. So our negative features within ourselves at the end of the day are going to be used to elevate the inner Joseph so that we activate our coat of many colors and get out of the pit. Sometimes we're sold to Egypt for slavery, but then even then the solar light conquers over the darkness, over the temptations, and ends up using it for its benefit anyway. Hence, we use our negative consequences for our negative circumstances for lessons. We always learn our lesson. And the inner Joseph is the one that comes to you when no one else does. Joseph is always checking on his brothers. He's coming to check to make sure they're okay and working. But because that is almost a sense of annoyance to them, they tell them to flee. So essentially, these allegorical stories open up portals to the psychological realm. Each archetype is personified and purified and given these intelligent features and functions because they represent certain subtle activities that take place within our life. Like when we have a breakthrough willpower moment, that's Moses. That spirit that comes to check on you, that's Joseph. Abraham is the inner father within that produces all of the other subtle spiritual faculties. So, let's read a little bit from Alva Boy Kuhn. Let's see. Water, however, is not confined solely to earth, but in the forms of vapor, visible as cloud or rain, and invisible as rarefied water vapor, pervades the earth's upper regions. But here we have in Hebrew concept of the heavens, the idea of heavens as the place where the waters of the upper firmament are associated with fire, sun or lightning. Hence, to the word for water, mayim, they prefixed that the letter of their alphabet, which is the symbol for fire, the letter shin, and this gives the word for heaven, the shiai mayim. This would convey all that range of meaning which flows from the idea of the original fiery power of the divine mind or spirit of God interfusing itself. One moment, please. I have someone at the door. What's going on?